Hi guys, my name is Xiao, and I graduated Stanford class of 2019, and I was on the women's soccer team. My major was in biomechanical engineering, and now I took a gap year after graduating, and now I'm going to be an incoming first-year medical student at Stanford.
Oh, so what made you decide in that major?
Yeah, so when I was choosing majors, I really wanted to do something engineering related because I'd really like math and science in high school, and so I was originally going to do bioengineering, but then I was taking a lot of mechanical engineering classes as well, and I found biomechanical engineering, which was exactly what I was interested in. And so it's just a combination of biology and mechanical engineering. And then specifically for me, I'm really interested in orthopedics. And I took one of the classes, orthopedic bioengineering, and that was perfect because you could really look at the mechanics of movement and mechanics of your joint loading and everything. So I really enjoyed the major.
Yeah, and I think that speaks also to a lot of other athletes who are really interested in just sort of how the body works like that, especially orthopedics is such a big field. When so when did you decide that you wanted to go to med school?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was younger, I would always tell my parents, tell my friends, like, I want to be a doctor. But everyone has like that dream jobs when they're younger. But it was really in high school, my senior year. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and we had this program where the local medical school, they had a specific medical curriculum for high school seniors and juniors. And I was a senior at the time, but basically I went to the medical school to take classes every afternoon my senior year, and they were specifically for high school students, but there was like research methods and anatomy and pathology, so it was really cool, and I got really interested. And they also had shadowing and like how to the steps to become a doctor, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna like pursue medicine definitely. And then all throughout college, that was the goal. So that's kind of my story.
So what steps when you were in college did you make sure that you did to prep for your med school application? And I guess since you knew in high school you started freshman year.
Yeah. So, I mean, first things first, I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my grades. I know that like applying to medical school is really competitive, and I want to give myself the best chance that I can. So, I just wanted to get like as high of a GPA as possible. And then some other steps for medical school, you want to make sure you have some extracurricular activities. And so for me, it was like, well, soccer is my main extracurricular activity. It's taking up most of my time.
All of your time. Yep.
And so that was I didn't really have that many other outside extracurricular activities, but I love soccer, and I think for what I learned throughout the medical school application process, they're really interested in things that you do consistently, in depth, passionate about. And so I thought that was like really complimentary to my application. And then some other things, volunteering. So what I did, I volunteered at the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital for a couple of years as a playroom volunteer, and it was really fun because you get to play with the kids and just keep them in high spirits. And then I also volunteered at the East Palo Alto Tennis and Tutoring, EPAT, as a volunteer tutor. And then one of the most important things to me and like to my application was research. So I got involved in research the end of my freshman year, back home in Omaha. I was doing research in a chemistry lab, and that was really fun. But I wanted to get some more orthopedic related research because that was something I was really interested in. And so I applied for the summer of my sophomore year. I applied for the BioX program at Stanford, And so I was able to get in a biomechanical engineering lab, Dr. Mark Levinston, and he was such a great mentor. And my like direct mentor, Marianne Black, she was amazing. And we were working on MRI imaging and looking at early osteoarthritis. So that was really cool. And then the summer after my junior year, I applied for the UAR major grant for research, and that my mentor was Dr. Jeff Abrams, and he's like one of the best mentors I've had. He's a orthopedic surgeon at Stanford, and he's really great. But so I was doing some basic science work in his lab. We were working with tendon cells, tenocytes. And then I continued that work throughout my senior year. So the summer after my junior year through my senior year. And then as I graduated, I was like, well, I want to continue working with Dr. Abrams because he was like such a great mentor. And so this past year, I've been doing clinical research with him, and we have a clinical trial, so learn a lot of clinical research methods. And so yeah, that was the path to medical school.
Yeah, and so just to make sure that I understand, you're in your current gap year, so you start medical school next year.
I start medical school in like a month.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Time is so weird right now.
I
Yeah,
know.
in a
I
month.
don't.
Okay.
It's crazy.
And so you decided to take that gap year not because of the need to finish requirements or um, anything like that, but because you really wanted more exposure with that mentor you really liked and in a lab that you really enjoyed your research in.
Yeah. So actually, I also took a gap year because it would have been pretty impossible for me to have applied my senior year because soccer's fall sport and a lot of the interviews are in the fall, and so I wouldn't have been able to go to my interviews and compete at the same time. So definitely for fall sports, I would recommend a gap year.
Okay. Yeah. And what do you see as like your next step? Like obviously going to like starting med school in a month or so is like a next step, but I mean sort of beyond that, where do you see your next path going? Because going to med school is the application process is a big endeavor. So what's sort of your next big milestone that you're looking for?
Yeah, I guess definitely going to med school. I'm really excited. Something I've been working towards like all my life. And just, I mean, really making the most out of all the resources med school has to offer. There's so many amazing professors, faculty, students, staff at Stanford. And like I've already been at Stanford for 4 years undergrad, 1 year research assistant, but just like continuing to like learn from others, learn from my peers. And then ultimately, like same as undergrad, do well in medical school. And I mean, my goal right now is in orthopedic surgery. I'm really interested in the field, but like at the same time, I want to go into med school with an open mind because there are so many specialties that I haven't explored yet. Um, and I also, Stanford Medical School is really unique in that they like emphasize research and discovery. And so I really like that because not only am I able to like learn medicine and learn how to be a doctor, I can also continue doing research and exploring new ideas that I want to look at. And so I really like that aspect and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and so with all of the like with the application process, I guess my first question is like what you think the hardest part of the med school application process was for you specifically.
Yeah, good question. So do you want me to go into an overview of the med school application process or just like,
Not necessarily.
yeah.
I think more of just like what did you find the hardest and sort of make you think like, wow, should I actually be doing this? Like this is kind of hard
Yeah.
or, sort of made you rethink maybe the path that you were on.
Yeah, so that's a great question. First, I thought that MCAT was pretty hard just getting myself to study, and because it's a pretty important test for your application. Obviously, it doesn't make your entire application, but if you get a good score, it helps a lot. And so that was pretty hard, just because of all the pressure that I was like, I put on myself. Is like, well, I want to get a good score. And then for the med school application specifically, I thought it was hard, to my first couple interviews were pretty like nerve wracking. I had never done a med school interview. I like myself, I know I get like pretty nervous talking to people that are like trying to decide my admission or not. But I found that I practiced a lot with my friends. And then once I got to the actual interview, it was totally fine. They were all so nice. The questions weren't all that hard. You just kind of talked about yourself. And so overall, like, it wasn't terrible. Essays, not fun, but you get through it.
And when was the chunk of time that you spent studying for the MCAT?
Yeah. Okay, so I took it in January of my senior year. So I studied about, really focused during winter break. Like
Oh
I took
wow.
yeah. So I mean, fall I took a pretty lighter course load, but we were also in season. And then studied a bit. I did a lot of the content review during the fall, and then during winter break, I don't think I had any finals that year, so I had 4 weeks to just study and do a ton of practice tests. And so that was kind of how I approached the MCAT.
Yeah. And then between like, I'm sure you looked at a lot of different med schools, and I'm
Uh-huh.
wondering what your take is on like what the differentiating factors are between med schools. Because I mean, maybe sometimes you go to the med school that you're accepted to, right? Because it's so hard to get in. But
Right.
um, I mean, you still have to decide between what kind of med school would I fit in at, and what's the certain vibe of other med schools. And so for you, what were the big things that were differentiating in the med schools that you had the opportunity to look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, so I mean, there's so many great med schools, and there's so many top programs that, really, they say it's very cliche, but it's kind of like where you fit in. Like on interview day, you meet a lot of people, you meet a lot of students. A lot of the curriculum is the same, learning in a different style. For me, I went into the application process being like, okay, I'm really interested in Stanford School, but I'm also really interested in any other school that'll accept me. And then once I like went on a couple interviews, got a couple acceptances, it was easier to be picky. And I guess if you're gonna pick, so some schools focus on uh, lots of clinical exposure, lots of like there's different curriculums where you have a flipped classroom model, you have like small groups, or you have a 1 year preclinical curriculum or a 2 year preclinical curriculum. So those could be places you decide on, like how you yourself learn best. And then one of the important factors for me was like, um, research. So like, how are the research opportunities? How early can students get started in research? Um, how available are the mentors? Yeah, so I mean, and then also location. Do you want to live on the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, weather, and then potentially other. We didn't get a second look because of coronavirus, but potentially other factors is like, who are my classmates going to be? Like, do I fit in well with them? And I think classmates at any school, they're all great. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that
What,
really answered your question.
that was fantastic. That was fantastic. I guess I have one last question, and that's like what you think you uniquely bring to the table to that you like can specifically mentor on.
Yeah.
What kind of mentoring can you give to people? Like what kind of connection? Do you sort of know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I think, I mean, for me, I've had so many great mentors and I like learn from them and I want to be like them and get help give good advice that they gave me. So I guess I've been helping a lot of people with who are currently applying with their personal statements, with their activities section on their application, with some secondary, so just like essay editing I can help with. And then if you wanted like MCAT studying tips, I could help with that. And then more specifically, like for pre-meds who aren't applying, like I could help with research ideas, or like research, how to get connected with a mentor, how to do research, clinical research or basic science research. I'm not terribly skilled at basic science research. I think I have more clinical research experience, but
Which is